All right. Well, welcome everybody to the October community call for V DAO. Glad to see so many folks here today. Some new faces and some of the regulars. So today's call agenda is going to be going over the goals and objectives, taking a look at the highlights for V community and what we've been doing. Talk about hosting a V community meetup, how you can get involved, and some of the circle updates, and then opening things up for questions or just general discussion. So looking at the goals and objectives for V DAO, I'll cover this pretty clearly and pretty quickly here. So V DAO's mission is to incubate regenerative network state communities and solutions. This is like the overarching mission. Goals and objectives are around education and awareness, developing token-based solutions, products, and incentives. And yeah, going through that real quick. Jumping into highlights here. Things are a little bit off. Apologize. Let's see if I can shrink this down. There we go. So yeah, looking at last month. So every month we do, or every week we do these virtual events where we have either like a peer-to-peer sort of form of learning, or an expert that comes into the community and shares a bit about what they're working on, or takes on a specific topic and kind of takes us on this educational journey, if you will. So looking back, we had some pretty amazing guests come in for things like the Twitter space. We had Marek Olszewski from C Labs. Some of you might be familiar with Cello. Then we also had Neil Smith that came in to talk about functional soil health. Pranav came in to discuss circular fashion. And then on September 10th, we had Anna Stone, who's the executive director from Good Dollar, come to talk about the future of UBI and really got into the discussion around what is programmable money and kind of what that unlocks in terms of, UBI, community currencies, etc. And then on September 21st, we held a lunch and learn with Sam Delesk about bridging your land-based project on chain. Learned a bit more deeply about the traditional Dream Factory, their kind of legal structure and how they've been set up. Kind of dove into the concept of, how do you establish microeconomies within these, village settings or these sort of, different hubs that exist, and how, we can maybe even apply something similar to what V DAO is doing. We also do the IRL stuff. So some of you were there in attendance at some of these different things. So we recently had, over the last month, the V Community Alps edition. Some folks got together to go and do a hike up into the mountains in Italy to take a look at a regenerative farm. There was a permaculture farm event in Vermont with Steph and a bunch of folks out there to talk about regenerative living and how permaculture could be applied to regenerative network states. There was an event in Munich recently at an art gallery. Then there was the big event out in Singapore, which some of you were also there, I see. Joshua and Eric over there. The event in Singapore was probably our biggest event over the last month or so that we've had, with almost 600 people that registered for the event in total. Over 100 folks that showed up to come together to just kind of hang out and talk about regenerative network states and get to know one another, really focused on just connecting with other people, builders and innovators in the space. And then there was an event I was at recently, MCon 3, that was in Detroit. And at that event, we did a community garden event where we went to go clean up a community garden, get it prepped for fall, and then went and planted on an empty lot the beginnings of a food forest. So we planted some peach trees that are going to be used in the future by the community. In terms of what we've got coming up, on October 8th, we have a lunch and learn. That'll be next week. It's going to be about food systems, community food systems. There's an individual by the name of Adrian who will be talking about his project, Calgary Harvest, and how they're making use of food that isn't being used or got left behind to then be able to create a food system within the community to make use of that produce. October 15th, we're going to have a spaces with Jasmine Energy's CPO, Dalton Combs, on the future of energy, taking a closer look at like decentralized energy, and hopefully have an interesting conversation around what a VPP is and how those could be implemented within a community setting. October 22nd, we're going to be having a community of voices where Gardner will be coming in to talk about digital wallets. Very excited about that one. And then October 29th will bring us to our next community call. In terms of in real life events, we have our next V Community meetup already scheduled, the Ojai edition, which is going to be in SoCal with Matai. It's going to be on a permaculture farm, regenerative farm. There's going to be a few things happening throughout the day. In the morning, there's going to be a half-day like intro to permaculture course that people can participate in. That's not exactly related to the meetup itself, but it is available during that day. The lunch will be there. It's going to be a farm to table lunch. It's going to have vegetarian and vegan options. And then after the lunch will be a hike. It is I wouldn't say it's a beginner level hike. The first portion of that hike is probably beginner level as I understand it. But Matai did mention that come prepared if you plan to attend the hike. So that should be really cool. If you're interested in hosting your own V Community meetup, well, let's first talk about what is a meetup. It is at the very core, it's an opportunity for people in a local area to come together and build the bonds, the foundation, if you will, of a potential hub. It's about bringing highly aligned individuals together to talk about regenerative living, and to really just connect. Number two, are you being reimbursed? Yes. So if you go and you want to host an event in your community and you've got like this venue, or it could be at a park, wherever it might be. So things like food or cost of venue has the potential of being reimbursed. The main things that we ask are that there's an intro to the V DAO community, which we kind of give you the roadmap on how to provide that. The other thing is that we ask that you take pictures. And then lastly, be sure to keep your receipts so that you can submit those for potential reimbursement. You do need to go through a proposal process, and you do need to be a V DAO contributor, which we'll talk about here shortly on how you can become a V DAO contributor. Yeah, we covered the code, what you got to do to host, and basically how to apply. So if you're interested in applying to host the event, reach out to myself, or you can find it on the community portal page under Host a V Community Meetup. And then you'll find some information there on what it is to actually host it. And then you'll find the type form that you can fill out to send in a proposal. That proposal will go to our governance circle lead to review it. And then you can actually go on the board there that's located in that section of the community portal to track the status. And then once that status has been moved over to moves from pending to approved, you'll be reached out by the circle lead of the event circle to kind of coordinate what the next steps are. So it's pretty we try to make it as easy as possible, and relatively straightforward, so that it's really low friction. And if there's any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I see that there's some stuff in the chat. I'll pull that up here shortly. So getting involved, in terms of like community assistance, there's 4 key things I think that you could really say that are going to be a good way to get involved and support the efforts of the DAO. Supporting us on socials. So anytime you see us posting on LinkedIn or on X, if you could give it a like, repost it, comment on it, share it with your friends, share it with your circle of people. That really helps to get the message out there, and especially around events, that really builds exposure for those events and creates more opportunity for other folks to participate. Always looking for Twitter Space guests. So if you have a suggestion for anybody that you think would be good to cover a topic that falls under regenerative network states or network states in general, governance, DPIN, these are all topics that we want to talk to folks about, and explore, other people working on this space. Becoming a contributor. So currently we are looking for more contributors to join the DAO. One of the circles that is extremely busy has been the event circle, both with virtual events and in-person events. So always looking for more people to help out in that area. And then, hosting a V community meetup is also a great way to, kind of assist and support the DAO. So if you're interested in doing that, again, reach out to myself or any of the members of the team. You can reach out to John. You can reach out to Eric even if you wanted to. Any DAO contributor. But also know that there is a page that you should probably check out first, and that would be the page on the community portal that I mentioned earlier. In terms of becoming a contributor, it's really easy. Join the Discord, find the apply for membership channel, complete the form, and you'll be asked to schedule a call with Chris. The form is fairly short and simple. The call is more of just an alignment call and kind of seeing where you're at and where you would like to contribute and support. You can also scan the QR code here, and that should pull up the contributor form as well. So in terms of updates in the DAO, specific circles, with the event circle, we have the network state camp coming up. Mark and I believe Gardner will be attending the network state camp. It's an event that takes place. It's a 3-day event, if I'm not mistaken, that takes place out in Austin, or that's actually just outside of Austin. And it's an opportunity for people to come together and explore the ideas behind a network state. There will also be Devcon coming up. So we've been looking at how to host an event at Devcon, and currently we're looking at hosting a villa style event, kind of like an unconference event that'll go on for 4 or 5 days. If you're looking for a more regenerative retreat, a bit of a slowed down pace, a place where you can co-work, network, learn, and participate in workshops, and even participate in things like yoga, looking at doing cold plunges, sauna, bike rides. This would be a great opportunity or a great place to do that. So look for more information about that coming out soon. In terms of the governance circle, we've got so we've been looking at how to track contributions in kind of the different ways of doing that, and then also developing a tasks board. So that will be coming out soon-ish. Don't have an exact date of when the task board will launch, but it should be soon. So there will be opportunities for people to kind of go and see this board of things that could be done within the DAO, and then you can submit to apply to do those tasks, essentially. Not to put John on the spot, but John, maybe since you're here, if you wanted to come up and unmute yourself and maybe cover a bit about what the governance circle's been talking about. But if not, if you're busy, don't worry about it.
Yeah, sure. So being, a new-ish DAO, and one without assets yet, a lot of the discussion around governance is somewhat like meta discussion. And then also, so like the meetups that Ben was talking about, and I posted in the chat, like highly encourage people if they're interested in hosting one. We make it super easy. We've reimbursed everybody who's requested. And so things like that, where resources are coming from Fifth World, we set up a process, around that with sort of a mind to, when there are potentially assets in the DAO, or when there are, what that could look like, as well as some discussions on what are ways that we could get some assets into the DAO. So things like grant writing, potentially a product that can have revenue, other things. Yeah, always happy to, and we have new people who have joined and contributed. So if anybody's interested or has questions, happy to have a one-on-one conversation about any of that, if that helps.
Thanks, John. And yeah, if you're curious about what the governance circle has been up to in maybe a bit more detail, you can always go to the community portal. If you scroll down, you'll find the section where there's different circle specific pages. Click on the governance circle page, and then you'll find at the bottom of that another page that'll take you to the meeting minutes. And then you can look at each individual meeting and see what's been discussed and kind of what are some of the to-do items that we've listed. And so that's another way to get a more closer look at what's being done and what's being talked about in these meetings.
Yep. Yeah, we have all those since inception. We meet every 2 weeks. So there's quite a few there. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think actually our next governance call is this Thursday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
All right. So that kind of wraps it up for like an update. I try to make it as quick and painless as possible to make more time and more room for questions or feedback or sharing of ideas. So definitely want to hear from everybody if there's any questions or anything. Now would be a great time to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
So I missed most of this recording because I'm moving from one place to another, but I'll rewatch it and just excited to help. But like content, brainstorming, DAO governance, community building, those kind of things, I'll definitely be more in the Discord and also just rewatch this to see like the presentation without the stoppages that I had to do. But excited to meet all you guys.
Yeah, excited. And you just joined the DAO as a contributor as well, and maybe you can share what that experience was like in terms of going through the process of applying, meeting with Chris, etc.
Oh, sure, yeah. I told Chris that, but he's okay if I tell everyone. I'm sure he's not in mind. Basically, it was very confusing in the sense that there wasn't a very clear explanation or any information really about what the membership really means. So I just clicked on it and like filled out a bunch of questions, and after a while, it was just submitted, and I didn't kind of realize I did it. It was very kind of surprising in a way, and so I didn't know what to expect. But then when I did talk to Chris, it became a lot clearer, and it was really nice. Like I really enjoyed talking with them and understanding everything. But the road to getting there was a bit weird from a marketer's perspective. You know, I've been a marketer for a long time, and the funnel was like, what am I doing? What's membership? What does it do? Why? All those questions were just like up in the air. But Chris is awesome, and the manifesto is awesome, and he even answered all the questions about Fifth World really well. So, like a huge red flag was kind of diffused by that. So that was really nice. And just the fact that somebody, especially from the founding team, takes the time to personally onboard every new potential member is huge. It's something that DAO is going to do these days, right? For obvious reasons, but still, it's huge. So that was really cool. And then, of course, I had a bit of like post onboarding with you in the Discord, and that's still ongoing with Notion and everything. So I'll let you know about that later on once I go through more of it. But I did put my photo in there, like answer the 3 top questions, like that was pretty easy. piece of cake, like 5 minutes type of thing. So, overall it's fine. It's just the membership part, like what it's about, why, and all of that. It's definitely confusing, and I get that part of it is intentional, but just my experience.
That's great feedback because that lets us know that at that beginning portion of the funnel that we need to provide more details and a bit more information and context as to what it is to be a member, if there's expectations, what those expectations are, and maybe even clarify the process a bit more. So that's actually great. Like this is what these meetings are all about, is so that we can talk with all of you and discover where we need to make improvements. And so that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much, David.
Yeah, and again, as a marketer, I can always like help you with that process, just like brainstorm it, talk it through, because it's fun. But I get that there's different goals, right? Like it is a good idea to put up a BRA if someone's like super lazy and doesn't even, after like requesting call, doesn't do the call, maybe they shouldn't be in the DAO. But also maybe the process is too confusing. So, kind of middle ground between that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Oh, go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, second what you were saying, Ben, that it is super helpful feedback, and it's the kind of things that governance circle has been talking about in terms of like, what involvement looks like, how we can encourage more involvement, but also communicate, expectations, and find ways to match people's interests in contributing with different things that we need. I thought on the form we had something at the end that had a when you submit it, a message on there. It should. I'll go back and check. But as you said, as a marketer, what would you be looking for? Something that clearly says, okay, look for an email, or someone will contact you in this format in the next day, or something like that?
For me personally, none of that. It's more about right away explaining what membership is, right? So like, don't just fill out questions and then submit, and then someone will contact you. That sounds a bit like, I don't know, the CIA or whatever, like a ransom kind of negotiation thing, or someone will contact you in 24 hours. But like, we're about this. Membership means this. If that sounds interesting to you, click here to schedule a quick catch-up call, and then you can start those questions. But then there's expectation on like what exactly membership means, because until I talked to Chris, I had zero idea what membership meant. Like absolutely zero, right? So
yeah, no, I totally agree. I that we need to articulate what it is up front. I was just focused on the specific part about after you fill it in. Okay.
After, yeah, you could say that like, thanks for your interest in the membership, and then you could put a tiny blurb about what membership is about, and then like one of our funders will is looking forward to, or whatever, Chris is looking forward to talking to you about it in more detail in the meantime. And then you can have a link to like the manifesto, maybe a few other things, like, mission, vision type of thing. But keep it light, because between initial interest and the call, you want to have enough additional information for them to stay interested, but not so much that it just overwhelms someone and turns them off. So again, balance.
Yeah. Just a follow-up question. Do you think it might be helpful to let people into the Discord sort of on like a provisional, basis, so they can, I know like when I'm checking out a community, that's one of the first places I go, like what kind of conversations are there? What's in the Discord, that kind of thing. So do you think, I get why it's been gated so far, but do you think that would be helpful, at least for certain types of people?
In my experience with V DAO, though, it wasn't fully gated. It was just the contributor servers that were gated, right? But the general one was open. It's just that right now there's not much going on in the general kind of in the town square, but I think that's going to be changing quite rapidly, right? So definitely it's good to add like more announcements, more like wiki type stuff in the Discord. And I just had this discussion recently on the panel that I was hosting, that basically we do need, all DAOs eventually need AI agents that make onboarding a lot more personalized and a lot quicker, right? So that instead of trying to find stuff through, hours and hours of wikis, to get like a very personalized, like, here's what you care about, put it in, like your interest, your background, whatever. It's like based on your interest, here's what you might want to look into, and literally be able to ask questions and kind of get answers the way with ChatGPT or Siri or whatever. That's going to be rolled out at some point, but maybe some simplified version of it at this point. I already saw some websites implementing it, so there might already be some tools out there.
Yeah, I agree. Based on other DAOs I'm involved in and thinking about onboarding, that would be super helpful. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of experience in this area. If you're interested, would love to follow up with you on some of these ideas.
Of course, yeah, just message me anytime, friend me and all that, and I'm happy to talk. I'll speak it up.
Thanks, David. Good to meet you.
Thanks, John. Same.
I think you're muted, Ben, because at least I'm not hearing you.
I
There
was
we go.
double muted. Sorry about that. I was just saying thank you, David, for that. I'm looking forward to connecting and working on these things with you. I saw you had mentioned you were interested, I believe, in the content pod, I believe, as well. So that should be good. Joshua, go ahead.
Well, kind of following up on this, the eternal challenge in building community between accommodate and educate and trying to get people onboarded and whatnot. One quick note is in the build community, we've got someone who has a platform called Yerba that does a lot of Discord automation for onboarding. So he's doing a lot of development where you can kind of customize the whole onboarding flow into Discord. So it's not just simply gated, but also as someone enters and works through a process, they're learning more and getting more information, and you could potentially direct it through different workflows on there. So there are some interesting solutions out there. I haven't started using it yet for our process and what we're developing, but just an interesting tool there that might help with something that is more of an engaged process besides just gated and then application, then open gate. Just thinking about how to process people into there. And my question is kind of general and just really curious about this space. Singapore was amazing, huge attendance there, a lot of people. And what I'm particularly interested in, what I think attracts me to V DAO, and that I think V DAO is really interested in, is the intersection between different audiences here and bringing in together the kind of regenerative, the blockchain / crypto. I like messing with people in Singapore because I was basically like, I don't care about crypto. I'm interested in blockchain. So regenerative, intentional, psychedelic, tech, like all these spaces are kind of connecting in this same space. And I think V DAO is doing that. And I'm just kind of curious what your guys' perspective is on that when we're looking at events specifically, let's say. We're really interested in Loki and Build and all these other groups that I'm connected with in hosting the in-person events. And maybe thematically, what are you guys looking at as far as tech / regenerative? You got hikes and farms, and then how do we integrate the crypto folks and the hippie folks and the older generation? We have a lot of our audiences. Oh, did I lose you there? Oh no, I'm back. A lot of our audiences 40s, 50s, even 60s. So I'm just curious, any open thoughts anybody has really on engaging a broad audience and a bunch of people from different spaces in that direction.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that so far, kind of our niche, if you will, has been that we've had these like really unique locations, venues where our events have been happening and providing a space that's more informal for the most part. I mean, BCC Brussels was like a full-on event, like absolutely packed with like a proper schedule, right? But a lot of our other events have been more social focused, more about bringing people together, more about kind of raising awareness that V DAO is kind of here, and we're injecting regenerative practices, regenerative living into the heart of like the network state space. And that so far the response has been really good. A A lot of folks have really enjoyed this sort of more laid back vibe, if you will, lower pressure, more natural connections, is kind of like what we've been hearing from folks, that they've been able to have more natural interactions with people because of that sort of more relaxed, if you will, vibe. I think you raised a good question though about like how do you broaden that out even further to be more inclusive. I would say like that approach is fairly inclusive, but maybe Chris, I see Chris joined, he may have some ideas on this. I think the question was, from what I understand, is like how do we kind of open the doors more to a broader audience and kind of bring in some of the older generation, and maybe some of the more what was it, Josh, again, the other groups that you were naming?
Yeah, and it's actually, I think you guys are doing the best the best job at it so far, even though it's kind of launching. That's what I'm really attracted to, is like you really are opening up that space and connecting people across these different audiences. So I guess maybe to hone that down a little bit more specifically, I'm curious on ways to engage. Well, I'll say one thing that's interesting is I know a large audience that is not Discord friendly necessarily. Are there any thoughts on how we could potentially engage people that are not familiar with Discord as a platform? Maybe they're on other platforms, but try to engage people so that they can continue engagement. Like I said, a lot of our people are in their older years and they're super active on Facebook. I can't stand Facebook and I'm hardly on it, but unfortunately I'm having to get back into it because that's where a lot of our people are, surprisingly. So yeah, just kind of thinking about that kind of fringe, that actually there's a huge amount of resources there, a lot of really passionate people that want to support something. My parents are 70s. They were in the original hippie movement. They're excited about what's happening. We're having community calls with people on Zoom that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, but they can't necessarily do everything on Discord. It's just outside of their scope right now. So just kind of fishing for perspective ideas on that.
Yeah, I think two things. One that comes to the top of my mind is that like this is probably an industry-wide issue, right? Like in Web3 in general, is how do folks that are building in the blockchain space in Web3 capture or not leave behind all those that are non-Web3? Like that's the vast majority, right? I mean, Web3 space, blockchain space is still a relatively small corner of the world. It is growing, but it's not like anywhere near like 50% even, right? So how do we do that in an effective way? I think there's a lot behind account abstraction that helps with that stuff, even on the community side. And being a person who builds community or is focused on like growing community, I'm a big fan of meeting community where they are. So, I mean, you can't force people into a platform that they don't want to use, right? That doesn't make sense. So how do we go about doing like Telegram, even Facebook, Instagram, and start moving into these other areas? And a part of that is somewhat to the extent of limited resource that we have so far. So building out the DAO contributors and specifically around the content pod is going to be key to help grow, the arms, if you will, or the reaches of VDAO into these other areas. And also looking at ways to leverage automation, I think, is another key thing. So there are like bots and stuff that will take announcements, for instance, from Discord and place them into Telegram, or vice versa, right? But then that's covers the announcement, that doesn't cover like the actual human to human connection that exists within community that you absolutely have to have still. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear what, if Chris is wanting to jump in, if he's still here, maybe hear what he has to say in regards to that as well. And then we'll
Sasha wanted to come in, but I can hop in after Sasha.
Okay, so yeah, Sasha, I see your hand there. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I am one of these guys you were talking about. So I'm 50, and so maybe I can tell a little bit about something about it. But I believe it's not the age topic. So I mean, you probably get it. I hang around with you guys every time. I'm muted. My camera is off, you know. But it's not about my age topic. For me, it's like I think what I'm looking for is something concrete, right? So something where I can say, all right, this is what you can follow, where you can really connect. So I think the stuff that you're working on is so really, it caught me really deep, right? And I think this is really some future stuff that you're working on. But yeah, you know, like, I mean, this is exactly as I've learned, this is the mission that you gave yourself, that you want to combine and these very different worlds. Yeah. And so yeah, that's at least my 2 cents to that topic. But maybe I just came back from a visit so I'm from Hamburg in Germany, and I'm working on a project in the very north of Germany, in the border to Denmark, at the Baltic Sea, and we want to kind of transform an old farm into a business retreat. And so it could be that we maybe in the next week we'll have a project there where we will place about 5 to 10 tiny spaces, and I implemented them already, the idea to, you know, to not only put tiny spaces there, but more let's give us the whole village, let's call it this, this whole vision of regenerative autonomous, to build a regenerative autonomous like little village, you know, then that we can talk about with people, because this is what people need. They need to see things, and in order to, in their head, to realize what we're talking about. And yeah, so maybe that could be something that what, there's German, okay, Leo, okay. Maybe we then based on a concrete project, it could maybe help also to to get more conversations and impulses and etc. exchange. Yeah, that's it.
Well, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ben. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Sasha. I think it's all about the in-person collaboration and meetups in real life. And I think the sooner we can move on into that kind of area, the better. That's what we've been trying to do with these events and local meetups, is trying to build community in these areas. Because what we could do is, like, we could go and like crowdfund or get donations and buy a whole ton of land. But if there's not like people in those local areas to manage and build out the infrastructure and develop projects in the land, then it's like, what's the point? So we need to build community first, get people on the ground who are interested, and then give them the resources that they need to take things to the next level. So that's why we've emphasized so much these local meetups, and we've got a budget there for anyone that just wants to go and host a. I'm sure Ben's already covered this earlier, but just like mention it again. If you want to host a local meetup in your area, we've got a budget there to do that. And we encourage everyone to go out and bring people together. We had one in Munich last week. Donnie organized that, and we're going to try and turn that into a monthly meetup in Munich. And eventually, the goal would be something similar to what you described up in your area, Sasha, like a location where people can come together, not necessarily for co-living, maybe just co-working at first, and take it from there. this is the direction that we're going in multiple different locations. There's a Bay Area group that's interested in this. There's a New York, New Jersey group. There's people in Vancouver that are interested. So the more people we have in the more different locations, the more we can learn from one another and kind of cross-pollinate in that way and support each other on the journey. And just briefly to wrap up, I think the local area, local hubs are likely to be more accessible to people within the local communities than something like Discord. I mean, who wants to hang out in Discord all day? Like, really? It's useful and it's necessary for coordination, but I would much rather hang out in a place where like there was some regenerative farming going on, or maybe we could go for a walk and check out some nature and stuff like that. And I think these physical hubs will become points of connection with local community members in a way that the Discord isn't going to achieve, or even a replacement for Discord like a Facebook or a Telegram and stuff. We need to get out into the real world and meet people that way, I think.
All right. Is there any other questions or comments or feedback? Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I think that's right on point there, and that's what we're working on really heavily right now is the networked concepts of nodes. So we've got to really figure out how we have the IRL local approach combined with this integrated networking that connects all those hubs everywhere. And I'm right with you guys on that. And I think there's some chaotic paths here working across a bunch of these different spaces and not trying to push in other groups. Obviously you guys are familiar with Build, but like there's a very much a city node type of structure there that I'm trying to figure out how to leverage that. Loki's, my project specifically, is trying to figure out how to set up these kind of rural nodes for places to connect physically, but still be connected and pass through and live between all these places. So 110% behind that, and just trying to figure out how to engage and support it.
Sounds great. And I think like with all these different solutions, like what Build City are building, what you guys are building, I think there's space for all of these things in my view. Like we're talking about like if network states scale, we're talking about global, international communities. And there's going to be lots of different opportunities to experiment with all these different primitives, I think. And when we're coming to implement that sort of infrastructure within V DAO, we won't be looking to reinvent the wheel there and spend ages building something bespoke and shiny just for us. We'll be looking at like what's already been used, what works, what's been tested, and how can we use that and integrate that in a way that kind of speeds things up and helps us achieve our mission more quickly. Bonnie.
Yeah, Donnie, go ahead.
That'll unmute there. How's it going, guys? Just been quietly listening here. But now that we're talking about some things that I find really, really interesting, I'll pipe in. There are some platforms that do have everything kind of built in order to just plug and play a network state. Every single thing that you need. One of them that I really like is Pangea, which I think I've mentioned to you guys briefly, but haven't really gone in depth in. But I guess we can do that at some time. But if anybody is looking into that, I highly recommend looking into it. It's a very interesting solution for every aspect, from digital identity, your personal records, everything being kept, and to currencies being built, to messaging systems inside of it. It really does encompass every aspect that one would need in order to create those nodes and have those nodes communicate and have those nodes be able to transact with one another. So it is certainly something to look at. It unfortunately currently I believe is it's on layer 1, which is not my favorite thing. It is EVM compatible, but it is an interesting idea anyway.
Is it open source? Do you know?
Autonomy Foundation that created Pangea is open source. I'm not sure if Pangea itself is fully open source. I'll have to check and get back to you.
Oh. Sounds interesting. Yeah, I just came across Pangea for the first time in Singapore, and it looks really cool, and I'm excited to learn more about it, for sure. Any other
Yeah, hi.
questions?
Yeah, I had one question.
Yeah, man.
In the context of these local nodes and these different networks, like there's so many broad global networks that are building up local node infrastructure. How do you see the different networks like socially being interoperable? Like, do you envision people being? I mean, I wasn't at the Network State conference. I still need to look at least at some of the summaries or some of the footage. But like in general, how like do you see people like currently with nation states, right? Most people have like one passport, and some have two, some have three, but it's pretty unusual to have more than three passports, I would say. Do you envision people being part of like many different network states, or do you envision people being part of this is my network state, this is my main, and like basically most people having only one network state they are part of? Or is it more like NFT communities where people have like in ton of different NFT communities? And yeah, how do you look at that? I mean, I guess it's also two questions, like one network state, like people being part of multiple network states, and then how do local node infrastructures, social infrastructures, but the same locations, but with different networks, interoperate? I guess it's two questions, yeah.
So I imagine that different projects will approach this differently, and that will probably have an impact on how much movement there is between different network states. Like some may have very specific criteria in terms of alignment with that community. But in terms of how VDAO approaches this, like we talk about regenerative network states rather than just one network state. So we're talking about multiple regenerative network states, and I imagine that there will be alignment between many of these network states in terms of values, in terms of regeneration, in terms of knowledge sharing, technology sharing, and cross-pollination. I think that will be key to growth, and trying to build in a way that generates a kind of win-win situation for both, and that kind of collaboration is what we're trying to foster within VDAO. And we are very open to working and meeting and engaging with other projects that are aligned with that kind of approach to collaboration, and also are interested in regeneration. And ultimately, I think I would like to see a situation where the idea of a new network state or building a new city, a new society, that regeneration just becomes implicit within that movement. Because if we're going to build in a way that's different from what we already have, it would be natural that we should rely upon regenerative systems. So in a way, we're also seeking to normalize this regenerative systems design approach within the network state space, until it just becomes like, oh, you're building a network state. Obviously, you use regenerative systems when you're doing that. You use circular systems, and you build in a way that's going to respect the ecology that you're building on. Does that answer your question? I don't know.
No, it definitely helps me to understand your mindset. Yeah, I mean, that many different ways of like how this collaboration can look like. I think in just sort of relevant in, or people like founders from, or people like heavily involved in from Germany, it's at least like 4 kind of ish regenerative network states ish, and obviously very varying degrees of, well, probably 5, but yeah, anyhow, like, yeah, how that looks like, because most of them are also still like in a forming stage and this and that. So I think it's interesting, and like in a way, I think one snippet that I saw from the conference was like, if Bitcoin is the new like internet native currency, then network states is the new network state, is the new internet. Like Bitcoin is to currency what network state is to states a little bit. Well, it was a different quote, but something along those lines. And like there's still a lot of room for creativity, but it's good for me to understand your mindset a little more. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to expand on what Chris was saying, it's quite possible that all these different network states might have various passport systems depending on how they get their access to their areas. And I guess that would just open the door for opportunity for somebody to create a passport management system at some point, so where that you have multiple passports and they're all within a singular system that manages those. But I mean, ultimately, yeah, I think what Chris was saying makes a lot of sense. If you're going to build a new system, why not build a system built on regenerative principles?
Do you have a list of regenerative principles?
Do I have a list of regenerative principles?
Do you have something to point to if people ask you what specifically are regenerative principles?
Yeah, we do have some things available that we could point to. Yes.
Okay. Because we were just last week, I was in a workshop and we were talking about what is regenerative, because like that was the context that we all met in, and it was a really interesting few-hour session. And yeah, it's not that easy to come up with a definition of what is regenerative. It's nice and helpful to come up with a big cloud of different words and concepts and framings, but to bring it into one definition is really not that easy.
Because you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, like, the permaculture principles are a good touch point in relation to this, and that would be a starting point in terms of the systems thinking approach. I think permaculture has a lot to offer there, but we're not like dogmatic about permaculture. There's other approaches that can also be helpful, like regenerative agriculture. Also think like some housing approaches like passive housing, solar, which all have something to offer in terms of circular and regenerative systems design. But I'm conscious of the time. I don't want to. I know we're running over here. I don't want to take up too much of anyone else's time here. Was there any final points that you wanted me to cover, or anything, Ben? Anything that came up earlier that you want me to touch on before we wrap? Or
no, I think we're good.
Sweet.
We covered most of the points that we wanted to cover, and kind of gave a pretty good solid update on the state of things in V DAO. So like I said, I'm just really excited to see some of the familiar faces, and of course some of the new faces. David, really looking connecting with you further to explore how that onboarding process can be improved. I think there's a lot of opportunity, like to what your point was about clarifying what membership is. So yeah, looking to explore that with you further. Other than that, I think yeah, we're about 3 minutes over. Didn't even realize it. Great conversations. So time flies. Till next time, make sure to check out the upcoming community, or not community voices, sorry, the lunch and learn that's going to be with Adrian on community food systems. He's going to be sharing with us the Calgary Harvest Project. And then the week after that, we'll be joined by the Jasmine Energy CPO, Dalton Combs, to explore what the future of energy is looking like. All right. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Cheers. Bye-bye.